Hi, everybody. So my guests today are Carrie and Caroline with the Madison County Child Advocacy Center. This organization came on my radar a couple years ago, just through different networking organizations. And then Caroline and I had a meeting this past summer, a couple months ago, and really let me know what this organization does. And it's so important to the community. I'll let them kind of go into the history and all the things they do, because I just couldn't even scratch the surface. So please make welcome Caroline and Carrie Cohen from the Madison County Child Advocacy Center.
Thank you. Thank you for having us all today. I want to start by just thanking all of you for what you do for our community and how much you give back and help it grow and thrive. And thank you for letting us come talk to you today. It's been a while since we've spoken to this group. I'm Carrie Cohen, the Executive Director, and Caroline.
Hi, I'm Caroline. I'm the new Fund Development Specialist for the center.
And so I'm going to share a little bit about the center, who we are, what we do, and then Caroline will share how you can connect with us and things that we have coming up. You all have packets. Did we pass them out or are they up front?
They are on your table.
Okay. So everybody should be able to have a packet of information that we'll reference probably throughout our talking. So the Child Advocacy Center is a resource for children who are involved in allegations of sexual abuse and severe physical abuse. We serve both Madison and Bond counties, and we are celebrating our 20th anniversary this year. You were talking about anniversaries earlier, so we are having an anniversary year. 20 years ago, then State's Attorney Kyle Knapp, who's now a circuit judge in Madison County, and then State's Attorney Bill Hain, who later became our state senator and has since passed on, but they came together to create our center along with many other people to do things different for kids who are involved in allegations of abuse. Right here in Madison County, 1 in 25 kids is involved in an allegation of abuse each year. That's one child in every classroom in every school in Madison County has their life disrupted by an allegation, an investigation of abuse, where they come into their home and find out what's going on. So everyone here knows someone whose life has been impacted by this. We specifically work with sexual abuse and severe physical abuse allegations, and all referrals that come to the center start by coming through either law enforcement or the Department of Children and Family Services, which is responsible for child protection in Illinois. And then they come to the center as part of that investigation related to a case. One of the main things that we do is coordinate a multidisciplinary team. So every child whose case is reported related to those kinds of allegations has a team come together on their behalf. That team includes law enforcement, which is responsible for the criminal investigation, child protection, again, which in Illinois is the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services. They're responsible for the child safety investigation. There are medical professionals that we work with who do specialized medical exams of kids related to abuse that might be going on. We have partners in mental health who can provide counseling and therapy for kids and victims and their families who are going through difficult times. We work with prosecutors. Prosecution will file charges and take a case through the criminal justice system if that's what's going to happen with a specific case. And then our child advocacy piece. All of those things come together and wrap around the child so that kids can come to our center and have all of that connected to them through their experience at the center. Last year, we conducted 518 interviews of kids related to allegations of abuse. And if you watch, how many of you watch crime shows, SVU or one of the crime investigation shows? Yeah, a lot of people do. So there are some things about that process that you watch on TV that are kind of real, but most of it's not. But we do have interview rooms that have windows so that the team can watch when our interviewers are interviewing. So one of the core services we provide is coordinating that team. Another is the forensic interviews of kids related to allegations. So we have staff whose job it is every day is to talk to kids about their abuse allegations and what's going on with them. And the interviewer and the child sit in one of our interview rooms, and our team sits in an observation room and watches the interview through what looks like a window, but it's a mirror on the side facing the children. And in that room, almost always is a detective from law enforcement, a child protection investigator, and often a prosecutor with our state's attorney's office, along with some staff at the center who help coordinate things and make sure everything runs smoothly. And they watch the interview and they listen, and then they move forward with whatever the rest of their investigation is going to be after those interviews. While the child is being interviewed, we have case managers on staff, and they meet with the family. They sit with the family who come into our doors and meet them wherever they're at. And often parents and caregivers are scared. They're nervous. They don't know what to expect. They're not sure what's going to happen next. They might be angry. They might be sad. They show up in lots of different ways. As you can imagine, if you were to find out something like this was happening to a child in your life, it would be devastating. And so our case managers meet them where they are. They listen, they provide support and education, and they connect them to whatever resources they need. And they spend the time with the family while the child is being interviewed at the center. And then another core service that we have at the center is therapy. We now have 2 therapists on site at the center that can see our kids. They're specially trained, and we actually have them over the next 6 months going through a very specialized training that is a nationally recognized evidence-based treatment protocol for victims of trauma. And so at the end of the next 6 months, they will be certified in that, and we're really excited about that. We invest a lot in our team and ongoing training, understanding research and best practice is something that we strive for and want to do better for kids every day. So our therapists are available to all of our kids and families to meet with them about those kinds of things as well. And all of these pieces come together at the center, and we have been doing all of those things in some fashion for the last 20 years. Back in 2019, we added a different piece, which I believe you all have helped us work with moving forward with prevention programming in the past. But in 2019, we were able to go out into schools for the first time to do sexual abuse prevention education. All schools in Illinois, grades K through 12, are required by Aaron's Law to provide child sexual abuse prevention education. And so we have partnered with several local school districts to provide that education programming. And some of the same case managers and interviewers who work with kids after abuse has happened at our center every day also get to go out into schools and meet with kids and teach them about how to keep their bodies safe, who the trusted adults are in their life, and what they can do if something happens to them. And it's a really wonderful experience for them to be out in the schools and doing that prevention programming with our children. And then we also try to do training with staff at the schools and teachers so that they can understand the dynamics of sexual abuse better and also understand what to do if a child does disclose. We often have kids disclose after they learn about this, and that there are people you can go to for help if you need help. So those are our main services. Caroline, do you want to talk about some things that are coming up?
Sure. Again, my name is Caroline. If any of you ever would like to actually come into our facility and see what we do at the center, speak to our forensic interviewers, our case managers, see the observation room, the interview room, and our waiting rooms, we invite you to rise up with the CAC on the fourth Friday of the month. The next one is April 28th. We'll have donuts and coffee, and you can come to our facility and really understand what's going on. We're doing that every 4th Friday throughout the rest of the year. There is a flyer in your packets if you need the reminder. Also, April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. Tomorrow is Wear Blue Day. If you wear blue tomorrow, you'll be sharing with the community around us that you are honoring to prevent child abuse in your community. So wear blue tomorrow for child abuse prevention. We also, sorry, we also right now could use your help. We are doing a hope and comfort drive. A lot of families that come to the center don't have everything that they need. And something that is needed when they're being displaced from their home or in the moment is like toothbrushes, socks, feminine care products, shampoo, conditioner, body wash. So we are looking for items to provide hope and comfort now through May 12th. So we are doing this drive. If you are interested in donating, please contact me. My information is on that flyer as well. One last thing that we've got in that packet that I'd like to touch on is the last page is our Let's Talk articles. Carrie had mentioned that we have 2 amazing therapists at our facility. They are writing articles monthly for us to share resources out to the community so we can get a better understanding of how to handle or work with children who have been abused or find the signs of abuse. Our March article is in there. Our April article was finished this morning. There's information, or there's a few copies of it on the back table. Last month was about teen dating violence. This month is about grooming. So lots of great information. You can always go to our website to the resources tab to find more articles if you are looking for additional resources like that. We are always available for anybody for questions. We're always looking to connect with groups so we can get the word out that we're here and that we're here to help our kids in our community. So do you have anything else you want to add?
Yeah. Well, let me pause for a second and see if anybody has any questions. And then I'm going to, I want to take you through a case, an example of a case so you can, that kind of highlights a lot of the services that we do. But does anybody have any questions or, yeah.
You mentioned Aaron's Law, what's that?
So Aaron's Law is a law that passed in Illinois that requires school districts in grades K through 12 to provide child sexual abuse prevention education. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You said you had over 500 cases last year. How many of those went to trial?
So about 10% of our cases get charged. And I would say in an average year, 2 to 5 cases go to trial. Most of our cases don't actually end up in the trial setting. They often plea out prior to a trial. I will tell you that one of the side benefits of how we do things at the Child Advocacy Center is every interview of the kid that is conducted at the center is recorded. So it's captured exactly what the interviewer says and what the child says about what has happened to them. And for kids who are ages 12 and under, that video can be used in a trial. However, regardless of age, a victim must go onto the stand and testify because the defendant has the right to cross-examine their accuser. And so kids do have to always testify in a trial setting. And it's quite traumatic, as you can imagine, because often trials are years later after. So most kids don't tell about child sexual abuse. What we know is that about 10% of child sexual abuse actually gets reported to authorities. And when they do tell, it's often delayed. Most victims, adults and children of sexual violence, do not tell right away. It's a delayed disclosure. So you have a child that may have told months or years after something happened, and then a trial is months or years after that. And when you go through a trial, you have to prepare yourself to talk about everything that happened to you again. And so you have to prepare for that, and it can be quite traumatizing for a person to go through that. So that works out well, but not very many cases actually go to trial. Yes.
So unfortunately, the demand for stuff is practically high. And in this last quarter, this organization and development, so Madison County alone, I heard presentation from you guys, your red family has started Oasis Women's Crisis Center, family ministry, and everybody bursting the seams for services needed for remodeling, funds are just over. Is there any kind of countywide or say, like mothership organizations share a database of between all the organizations and just kind of making sure that not everybody's trying to recreate the wheel, or that maybe some people are being fashioned they overserve, but are fogging up the system because they're using resources in multiple places.
I think that's a great question. There are a lot of really amazing organizations in Madison County and across the region. And there are many different ways that those groups interact with each other. Is there one central way that they all interact? No. But there are lots of networking groups and different ways that people are connected. And in today's world with less resources and more demand, there's much less of a chance of overlapping of services. But for example, something that we do, Caroline mentioned our Hope and Comfort Drive. We also do holiday baskets during the holidays. And our case managers connect with their families, and there are lots of places that help provide assistance for the holidays. And so we might refer people out to someone else who is providing a service, or we might provide it ourselves, but we don't overlap, if you will. So I think people work hard to do that. And we refer to each other. So all those organizations you mentioned, we refer to all of them for the services that they provide.
I don't matter about the people that are using the services from several places that are because they're local places.
Yeah, and the thing is, though, is people's lives are so complex that often people need multiple service providers to address things that are going on with them. So I do think that there is a good system of reaching out to our local providers to send people where they need to go for specific needs. We have a specific purpose we serve, but if somebody needs any number of other things, we would be referring to that other organization to help provide that service. But we communicate with them as well about what's going on, which is wonderful. Yes.
So you mentioned that the process can be months or years. Does your team follow that person, that family through the whole process, or usually one piece of it?
Good question. It's a multifaceted question. So everyone on the multidisciplinary team has a role to play, and we kind of stay in our lanes. You perform your role, we perform our role, but we do it working collaboratively and in conjunction with each other. Our case managers can stay with the family for as long as they want. So many families get through the initial investigative process and kind of want to close out and kind of move on. We have families who then will call back a year or two later and say, my child's struggling, I need help now. So we help them. We will never not help someone who has come through the center. And then we have some families that stay connected for a long time, and they just, maybe their needs continue. Maybe they just need the support. Maybe they're involved in therapy for long-term, things like that. So their length of connection to us is dependent on them, and we will stay connected to them as long as they want to. Great questions.
Here you go.
Yes.
What happens to a child in the case of sexual or physical abuse when it's in her family? So an allegation is made against maybe a parent, and how do they stay separated from the situation while this is ongoing?
Great question. So I want to address something first that you brought up, and that is well over 75% of the time in sexual abuse cases specifically, the alleged perpetrator is in the home or is a close family friend or is an extended piece of the family. It's almost always someone who is very connected to the family. And there's a reason for that. Our people in our community who sexually abuse children groom the kids, and they groom the kids' environment so that they have access to them. And it's very calculated and purposeful. And so great question, because that is most of the time. We have promoted stranger danger over the years. And while it is possible for a child to be randomly snatched up and taken away, that is not normal. That is not what happens, hardly ever. And when we have an allegation, when that comes out, we are questioning what's really going on, because it just doesn't happen hardly ever. So how do we keep kids safe? Primarily, that is the Department of Children and Family Services responsibility, is to address that safety concern. In an ideal situation, the child would be able to stay in their environment and the perpetrator would leave until the investigation is completed. But they do have, for safety reasons, they often need to be separated. And so that's either done with the perpetrator leaving or with the child leaving. People also ask often how many kids are removed from their home. That doesn't happen most of the time. Most of the time, there is a parent or caregiver who is part of their family who is keeping the child and supporting them and giving them support through the process. But it is important especially for that initial investigation to happen as quickly as possible. And so law enforcement is always involved in our cases because cases of child sexual abuse and severe physical abuse are always a potential crime. The Department of Children and Family Services are involved in our cases most of the time. They get involved when an alleged perpetrator is in the home, is in a caretaker role or a position of authority like a teacher or a coach or something like that. And so they are not always involved. So the quicker that an investigation can happen following an outcry of abuse, the better. And it also helps with the safety of the kids as well whenever you're dealing with those situations. Good question. So let me take you through a case, and then if anyone has any other questions, you can ask. This case sort of highlights almost everything about what we do at the center. So we had a gentleman who came to a minister in his life and said, I have been doing these things to my 2 daughters. And so in that moment, that minister became a mandated reporter per Illinois law. And so what that person said to him was, either you turn yourself in or I'm going to turn you in. And so that was great in this case. And so he went down to a local police department and said, I need to tell you about the things that I've been doing to my 2 daughters. And in this case, the detective that worked at that department is a big piece of our team, works a lot of our cases. We interacted with him regularly. And he said, hold up, like, this is law enforcement's dream when somebody comes in and says they want to confess everything, right? But he said, hold up, let's talk to the kids first, because that's the best way to do what we do. And so we scheduled emergency interviews of these 2- and 3-year-old girls and brought them into the center. And, I didn't say this earlier, but we primarily serve ages 3 to 17. A child has to be verbal in order to provide an interview of what's going on with them. And so, as you can imagine, interviews of under 4 are quite challenging because kids of that age have limited developmental capacity, and they're also limited ability to sit still for a long time and focus and all the things. So we were able to get some information from these 2- and 3-year-old girls that detective was then able to use in his interview of the alleged offender, and who then gave a whole lot of details about what was going on related to the things that the girls told about. And so he was taken into custody, and this was a situation where the house that they lived in was in his family's name. He was the only person who worked. The car was in their name. Mom, they had the 2 little girls, and mom was pregnant with their 3rd child. And this mom's life was completely torn upside down, and everything, she no longer had a house. She no longer had a car. She didn't have income. And so this was a situation where our case managers were in sort of crisis mode with them and helping connect them with very real, tangible things for how do you survive and live in the next weeks, days, month. They were also very involved in their church. And so part of the church family aligned with the father, and then the mother had to develop her own church place for support. But she did. They were strong and they worked through it. That year, it was around the holiday season, so that family received a holiday basket from us. And some of the families that we work with, due to extra donors that come in, Caroline helps us with those, we were able to give them Christmas presents in addition to a meal and things like that that we typically give with our holiday baskets. And eventually that case went to trial. That case did go to trial. And he was convicted and sentenced. And then that case was appealed, and it was overturned on a technicality of an expert not being allowed to testify for the defense. And so the prosecution chose to retry that case again. He was convicted again and sentenced again. And so unfortunately that family had to go through 2 trials to get their justice. But one really neat thing that happened also afterwards was several years after the initial outcry and investigation on that case, the mom reached out to the center and said, I was so grateful for the holiday baskets that you all shared. And it made such a difference for us to know that people cared about us and helped us. This year, we have a little bit of extra money and we'd like to sponsor a different family. And so they sponsored another family through our holiday basket drive that year. And that really just meant so much, I think, to everyone and also for that family to be able to give back. And just sort of highlights how important community helping community is for people, and especially when they're going through really difficult, rough times, to know that people care about them and are willing to be there for them, support them, connect them, and help them out. And that case really, so we didn't serve them through our therapy program, but we referred them. At the time that they came through the center, we did not have therapy on site. And so, and also serving 2- and 3-year-olds is a little different than serving older kids that are more verbal, but they still were connected to therapy, play therapy services through that. So they really were able to participate in every bit of our process, and every part of our team was able to connect with them. And I hope that they can now, after 2 convictions, I think they're unable to appeal that case any further, that they can move on with their life and thrive. And they're doing pretty well, by the way. Some people ask me that. They're doing pretty well, all things considered. So any other questions? Yeah.
One last question.
Yeah.
And first of all, it's a very tough and needed job, and a lot of people that I could not do it. But in honor, since you are amazing, in honor of our longtime Rotarian and late Gary Coffey, I have to ask, what percentage of your budget comes from public funds?
Public meaning government funds? Yeah. Okay, so we have, I would say about, right at about 50% of our budget right now is coming from the county. Madison County supports us. We have a federal grant that supports us through the Victims of Crime Act, and that is probably about 20%. And then we have a state grant that comes through the Department of Children and Family Services, which is probably about 7%. And then the rest of our budget is made up through fundraising and other smaller grants and things that we write to like local foundations. And we just had our trivia night event. It was so much fun. It was. We hadn't had it in 3 years, so it was really great to be back together. And it was Caroline's first big event with us as well. It was the best ever in terms of money raised. So we have events like that to help us support our budget as well. Any other questions? All right. Thank you all.